Welcome back, everybody. Christmas week here on Silver and Black today. Welcome back to the show, an Odyssey Sports original podcast, also heard on the radio, 1015 KDON and 840 KXNT in Las Vegas. Scott Gulbransen, along with my partner Moe Moten, here to talk about Raiders football. Some positives to talk about this week. Hey. You got to like that. Just in time for Christmas, you get some gifts. The game that wasn't awful to watch, for example. We'll get into that one here as well. Do me a favor. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. Look for Silver and Black today. Don't forget to rate and review. If you're watching us on video, give us that thumbs up, the subscription, and don't forget to hit the notifications bell. Moe Moten is my partner. He is senior NFL writer here at, or I should say, at Bleacher Report. Also, the Raiders columnist at sportsnot.com. You can follow him on X, Moe Moten, MoeMoton. I am at LV Gully. The show is SNB today. The Raiders, of course, downed by the Houston Texans. 23-21, a game a lot closer than the odds makers or anybody thought it would be. The Raiders come out and actually have a decent performance, especially when you look at the roster where they're at. It was one that was not painful to watch, as many games have been this year. But, Mo, we saw some great things out of this Raiders team. I say great with a grain of salt. Clearly, the defense held the Houston Texans in check for most of the game. Of course, they couldn't close out at the end, as we always say here on the show, in harking back to one of my favorite movies and plays, which is Glengarry Glen Ross, closers get coffee. Coffee is for closers. Raiders couldn't close out this one on the road. And you could say maybe Houston, looking ahead a little bit, was not their best on offense. But nonetheless, you got to take the positives where you can. The Raiders offense, most of all, despite the early pick six by Geno Smith, you have Ashton Jeanty, 188 total yards, the first running back since Saquon Barkley to have 160 yards plus those two touchdowns in that game as a rookie. So he's in good company there for those of you who've doubted Ashton Jeanty behind that terrible offensive line. But, Mo, I want to get your impression of this one. I think it's scary for people because, number one, a lot of people thought they might win that game and quote unquote screw up the tank or the draft order. The Raiders have two more hacks at the pinata, if you will, where they face the Giants and Chiefs at home, both winnable games. But when you look at this team and the progression you've seen over the last 2 weeks, what's your takeaway overall from where they're at and where they could be over weeks 17 and 18?
Well, I said if Ashton Jeanty plays like he did on Sunday, the Raiders are going to beat the Giants and the Chiefs. The Giants have one of the worst run defenses in the league. Coming into Sunday, they were giving up the second most rushing yards per game and the most rushing yards per carry. So there you go. Ashton Jeanty could have another game where he's over 100 yards rushing. And I know for the tank crowd, you don't want to hear that. But if you're looking at it from the positive side, at least you can say that Ashton Jeanty, as you said, looks like the star that the Raiders would hope he'd be. He was running behind an offensive line with multiple backups. Rookie Caleb Rogers is out there. And then he's going up against the best defense in the league. You said it. A lot of people thought that this was going to be a blowout. The Raiders only lose by 2 points. And this is the best that they've looked in 2 months. Now, a little too late for all of this, but you're happy to see the progression out of Jeanty against a formidable, again, best defense in the league. But now you're worried that if you wanted that quarterback with the number 1 overall pick, now you're worried that it'll mess up the tank. And I've said this all along, that players don't care about draft picks. They go out there and they do their best. They put their blood, sweat, and tears into this through the week so they could play their best on Sundays, Thursdays, Mondays, whatever the case is. So it's an interesting situation for the Raiders and Raider fans and what they're looking for in the next 2 weeks. They're home for the last 2 games, and I'm just curious as to what the fan reaction is going to be if the Raiders actually win one or both those games.
Right, and I think we saw some increased play out of that offensive line. It's nowhere near where it needs to be, so don't come at me on social media and say, oh, how can you say their offensive line's doing good? They're doing better. And Caleb Rogers, a lot of people, I said last week on this show that Caleb Rogers was doing better, and people were like, well, it's terrible. Well, yeah, I'm not saying he's in the 90 grade percentile if you're a PFF guy, but you see better play out of there. You want to see these rookies. That's what look, you're not going to the playoffs. You're not getting anything. You want to see what these guys can do. And I think that move shows that it could have maybe done earlier. Who knows? But to me, that's what we're seeing out of this team. And then to your point about Ashton Jeanty, we heard a lot of people, well, he's a wasted draft pick. He's not a wasted draft pick. If you can build that offensive line in addition to getting a quarterback, you don't have to do one or the other. You can do both. Then suddenly Ashton Jeanty becomes a huge part of this offense. And of course, you saw Brock Bowers again. When he's freed up a little bit, when you can run the ball, that's going to free up the passing game. Geno Smith still not up to snuff. He shouldn't be back next year, as Pete Carroll shouldn't be back next year. But this is what we wanted to see earlier in the season. And might that have moved them even further down in the draft? Yes. But when you're developing a team, you have to see what talent you have. And Mo, I think we're starting to see that, whether or not that's Pete Carroll finally coming around, or if it was John Spytek, the organization, kind of putting some pressure to say, hey, we got to see what we got here. Either way, you're starting to see a little more of that.
I think Pete Carroll is starting to be a little more flexible, but again, it's a little too late.
Yes.
There was another note that the Raiders, I think D'Amico Ryan said this in his post-game presser. He said that this defensive unit is better than people give it credit for. He also noticed that the Raiders played less cover 3 in the previous game.
Yeah.
Now, if you remember, Jesse Merrick of the Silver and Black Sports Network asked a question a couple of weeks ago, asking Pete Carroll, you play cover 3 more than any other team in the league, and something to the effect that it hasn't been very effective. Now we come into this game this past Sunday, and D'Amico Ryans, a defensive-minded head coach who understands defenses and knows what a good defense looks like, said, this defense is actually better than people give it credit for, and they switched things up. So more blitzes, less cover 3. Could be Pete Carroll finally being a little more flexible. But again, this should have been done back in October. These changes and tweaks and modifications should have been done in October, and it could have probably amounted to more wins. We never know. But I don't know if this is Pete Carroll finally seeing the light and allowing his assistants or other people to kind of influence his game plan, or is this just Pete Carroll knowing that he's probably going to lose his job at the end of the season? So, I'm on the way out anyway. But regardless of the fact, the Raiders are playing better football, and we'll see what that leads to in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, the talk of Pete Carroll losing his job seems to be picking up steam with NFL insiders across the league. So there's definitely the smoke there. And you're right. Pete Carroll might be thinking, well, I got to try to save my job. I got to do something over the last few weeks to try to do that. Or maybe it's a foregone conclusion. I don't know. But we did even see Charles Grant get in there. He played 5 snaps. Often, I think the 3 I counted offhand were as an extra blocker, which is totally fine as well. But at least we saw him get in there. And of course, Caleb Rogers played the entire game against the Houston Texans. But to me, that was the thing is what could have been. Now, either way, I think this team is in the same position in what it needs. It needs to beef that offensive lineup. It needs a quarterback for the future. It needs help at defensive back as well. Mo, we saw, even though Houston did not have a good game, CJ Stroud actually looked off kilter after a big week the week previous, but we're still seeing some of the same outages. And you went to the point about D'Amico Ryans talking about how that defense plays and some of the coverages, and you talked about that. But I think that, again, the areas that we've identified and everyone else who covers the team has identified are things that you start to look at and look down the line. And we're going to have some people on the show over the next few weeks to talk about some of these positions, because the Raiders have a lot of work to do. I've seen fan videos out there, people saying, geez, the Raiders need so much. I just don't know how they do it. And I think part of that, Mo, is we talk about a rebuild. And I think that the significance of this rebuild go beyond what we've seen the Raiders, quote unquote, do in the past with rebuilds, meaning that there's a lot of tearing down of the studs here. I think you look at the linebacking core, you look at some of that defensive back, there's upgrades that are needed everywhere. And I caution people, you're not going to do it all in 1 year. But I saw in the game yesterday some of the same things we've seen all season long with, I think, just a lack of talent.
There's definitely a lack of talent there. The Raiders need an influx of talent, and that's where, in my opinion, the blame goes to John Spytek and his bargain bin out shopping in free agency this year.
Mm-hmm.
I did a Bleacher Report VOD on this, that Coupon John needs to go away. We need John to spend some money, not necessarily to win free agency, because I understand winning free agency doesn't amount to winning more football games. But the Raiders have a lot of holes to fill, and they're going to have over $107 million in cap space. Use it to fix this football team, because he wasn't aggressive enough in filling some of the voids this season. A lot of Band-Aid players that aren't going to be on the roster next year he brought in. He's got to bring in some more, I want to say long-term, more 2 to 3 year contracts for younger guys that can potentially build something in Las Vegas. I just watched on Sunday night Caleb Von Chason make a big play to help the Patriots win that football game, and I'm wondering, Patriots got him for 1 year, $3 million. Was he not interested to come back to Las Vegas for maybe a little bit more money? Because the Raiders have offered, 5, 6 million to keep him. See, guys like that, not necessarily stars, but younger guys. He's still a young guy. He was drafted in 2020. That's the type of player you want to bring in, because you could build something with him. He leads the Patriots in sacks this year. Caleb Von Chason
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
You bring in some more guys in their mid to late 20s, and build something for the worthwhile for the short term, so that you can build this football team up and they can win some more football games.
Right, Mo. And I think here too goes back to the coaching situation too. Is you get guys in the building, and if they don't develop or play their best, yeah, some of that's on them. There's no question. But we've seen several examples this year of players that the Raiders decided to pass on for money or whatever reason, go on to other places with other coaching staffs and put up nice numbers, right? So to me, this is another indication that I think it's just time to clear house, new defensive coordinator, new head coach, everything together, and start to build with a vision, right? We've talked about this, and we've heard players say that there seems to be, at least anonymously to the media, they've said there doesn't seem to be a cohesive vision between the front office and the coaching staff. And I think that's why, not just because Pete Carroll hasn't won, but also because of the lack of development that you're seeing in some of these players, or very slow development in the case of Caleb Rogers, who they said wasn't ready until recently. So why wasn't he ready? He's very good, passable right now. Is he great? No, but he's playing average, which for a rookie third rounder, okay, you can build on that. And maybe if there was better development there, maybe if you had a better coach at offensive line, maybe he would be further along and this team would be in a different space. All right, we're going to take our first break here on Silver and Black today. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what happens if Pete Carroll comes back. What does next year look like if some things don't change? We're going to play with Mostradamus here. He's going to put on his turban and get ready to go and open his crystal ball and see what happens. But we'll get into that. And then the third segment, of course, we'll get to some of your phone calls here during Christmas week from all of us here at Silver and Black today. Merry Christmas to all of you and yours. We're coming back right after this message. Okay, just in time for Christmas, it's time for the Christmas Day Sleeper Daily Fantasy Football Picks from Mo. He's going to bring you along, of course, Sleeper Fantasy Football, Daily Fantasy Football, proud sponsor here of Silver and Black today. Not only that, but if you deposit, get the app, deposit some money in there, up to $100, they're going to match it up to $100 using the code GENTY. How timely, just had a big game. Use the code GENTY, get a free $100, up to $100 deposit match from our friends at Sleeper Picks. All right, Mo, we got those three stellar Christmas Day games. Really the only one that, and we chose this one because there's a little more interest here. The Detroit, Minnesota game, of course, NFC North battle. Detroit 8-7, trying to stay in the playoff race here. So they are one team that really has something to play for here. And obviously got some good players in there. So let's pick some of those, starting with the Lions. Who you like on the Lions for daily fantasy football picks with Sleeper this time?
So I'll start with Jared Goff. I'll take the over his passing yards. Jared Goff took a while to get going this past Sunday against the Steelers. I think he's going to finally get it going. He's going to be indoors against Minnesota. Minnesota's pass defense could be hit or miss depending on the opponent, but I think Jared Goff picks it up, as the Lions need this game to keep their playoff hopes alive. And if they're going to do that, Jared Goff has got to get cooking. So I'll take the over on his passing yard total.
All right. He's got the over of 240.5. Okay. Another Lion, or you want to go to the Viking side?
We'll take another Lion, and I'll go with Jahmyr Gibbs' receiving yard total. I'll take the over on that one. I actually feel like Minnesota could be a bit sticky on the back end, though I do think Jared Goff will throw for some yards. I think they'll attack the middle of the Minnesota Vikings defense. Their linebackers can be shaky in coverage, and that's the zone and area where Jahmyr Gibbs can definitely eat.
Yeah, I like that one too. 32.5 yards. Mo's taking the over. Now on the Minnesota side.
On the Minnesota side, I'll take Justin Jefferson's over on receiving yards. It shouldn't be too high simply because J.J. McCarthy hurt his hand this past Sunday. If it's Max Brosmer, you know how it goes with these quarterbacks who aren't experienced. They usually like to go to their first read, right? So Justin Jefferson is the first read. There's going to be a lot of reliance on him to get going in this football game to keep the Minnesota Vikings in it. So whether it's Max Brosmer or J.J. McCarthy with a hurt hand, Justin Jefferson over on his receiving yards.
There you go. So here's Mo's pick for the Christmas Day NFL Sleeper Pick Daily Fantasy Football. You got Jared Goff over 240.5 yards. You have Jahmyr Gibbs, 32.5 yards receiving. Let's get Mo back on the screen. There he is. 32.5 yards receiving for Jahmyr Gibbs. And then Justin Jefferson over 60.5 yards. So there you go. Make sure you go that. Hey, $20. You put $20 daily fantasy football playing with Mo on Sleeper Picks, that's going to net you $69.20. That's pretty dang good. It's a nice little Christmas gift. And not only that, when you download the app, put your money, make a first deposit, they are going to match it up to $100 using the code Jeanty. That's Jeanty. Make sure you check the website or the app for all rules and regulations. Sleeper Picks is not available for daily fantasy football in every state, but most likely your state. So make sure you check that out. Good luck to you from our friends at Sleeper Picks. All right. Welcome back. It's time for a second segment here of Silver and Black today. Hope you're having a great Christmas week, enjoying time with family and loved ones. And I always say this on every holiday for those of you, because I married into a service industry family, all of you working over the holidays, including folks in the media. They work as well. Thank you for working and the sacrifice you make over that time, because it's tough. It's tough when you have to work and the families are gathered and eating and having a good time over Christmas, New Year's, what have you. So thank you to all of you for doing that out there. Scott Gulbransen back with Moe Moten, Silver and Black today, Odyssey Sports Original Podcast, Radio 1015 KDON and 840 KXNT in Las Vegas. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your audio. Mo, we were talking about some of the things, and we've been talking about weeks now about what changes could be on the horizon for the Raiders. Many are needed. The dysfunction, the lack of cohesive vision between front office, coaching staff, player acquisition. You talked about spending a little more in free agent, smartly spending in free agent. That's the key here, including not playing just bargain bin basement stuff, but also going out and getting guys that are going to make an impact. But one of the things I've heard, and I've seen you actually post on Sunday as I was sitting in my infirmed bed, recovering from the flu, watching the Raider game, was that, hey, you know, what if they win these last two games? And that means 2 out of the 3 in the season they win, and the loss to the Texans, they look pretty good, looked like they had some life. If they win these 2 games and Pete Carroll comes back, boy, can you imagine? Mo, I just don't see in any world, even if that happens, that's a good move for this franchise. Could it happen? Yes. I've been around the Raiders too long enough to know that anything can happen. But if that happens, Mo, what does that say about the organization and this team?
It says that they're going to run it back with some key players. And by key players, I mean Geno Smith. And I know a lot of fans, I don't want to hear that. But if Pete Carroll stays, you better believe Geno Smith is going to be back. He's going to want Geno Smith to be there regardless of what the Raiders do at the quarterback position, whether they get a young guy or not. He's going to want Geno Smith to continue to be that bridge to that young quarterback. So if Pete Carroll is back in 2026, you can say hello to Geno Smith for week 1 of the 2026 season. And you're probably going to get some other players who played under Pete Carroll in Seattle during his time there, because we saw that in his first year. Now, hopefully we see more of an influx of young players playing earlier than we saw them this year. But I would expect more of the same of what we saw in year 1, with the only difference being, hopefully, a young quarterback behind Geno Smith that they plan to develop, and seeing some of John Spivak's rookie class in 2025 on the field earlier than late November, early December, like we saw this year. So maybe Pete Carroll goes into the office and says, hey, I understand why I messed up. I've never been in this situation before, because in all honesty, in fairness, Pete Carroll has not been in this situation before in Seattle, where he's with a team that's in contention for the number one overall pick. Even going back to the Jets, I mean, he had some lesser teams there, but this team could be the number one, could be in the number one spot in the draft order. And Pete Carroll stepping to the podium and saying, I've never been in this situation before. He had to adjust on the fly. And for a 74, 75-year-old head coach, that's tough to do. I'm not giving him a pass for that. But what I'm
Right.
explaining is this is probably why you had a delay in the development of this young class and some of the young players coming off the sideline. So Pete Carroll's not getting a pass. But if Brady, Spytech, Jim Gray, Mark Davis are willing to listen to that excuse or reason, whatever you want to call it, they may give him a run back for another year, which I wouldn't agree with. I think Pete Carroll should be fired and they should bring in a young offensive minded head coach. Hello, look at what Ben Johnson's doing in Chicago. Look at what Liam Cohen is doing in Jacksonville. But, this Mark Davis and crew are going to make the big decision. We know Pete Carroll's on the hot seat. It's not a foregone conclusion yet, though I think it should. Pete Carroll may be able to convince some people to give him another year.
Yeah, I think it would be the ultimate disaster in the history of professional football. And I think that I know you could say that maybe the last 30 years, this franchise has been dying, at least on the field. It's not off the field. It's worth $7.9 billion. So for those of you who say, yeah, they're going to pay another coach, it doesn't matter. That money doesn't matter. That $7.9 billion. There's an evaluation that puts it up to $9 billion. It's worth a lot of money, and that's not counted towards salary cap or any of that stuff. So who cares if you have to pay him to go away? It just would mean you're not even sure what your future is if you bring Pete Carroll back. Not only that, Mo, if you look at, listen, next year will again be another transition year, whether he's back or you have a young head coach come in, offensive-minded head coach, which I agree with you. But you look at the opponents next year outside the division, which your division outside of the Chiefs, who I think will bounce back next year. I don't know how good they'll be, but they'll bounce back. They won't be as bad as they are this year. But you have the Broncos, you have the Chargers, both playoff teams at this point, right? Then next year, their home opponents include, outside the division, the Bills, the Rams, and the Seahawks. Now, they get the Dolphins at home, too. Then on the road, they have Arizona, New England, going to be a playoff team, San Francisco, same thing. So the schedule next year does not get any easier. It's going to be a tough road next season, no matter who's there, no matter what the lineup is. But I think you have to start giving the fan base too, Mo. Listen, I know fan bases are always around, Raider Nation's loyal, but if you run it back another year with Pete Carroll and Geno Smith, you may actually lose people, at least temporarily, meaning they're going to tune out. They're not going to want to be involved because what would there be to be now? Okay, if you get Fernando Mendoza and he's sitting behind Geno Smith, you got to question yourself there because, hey, I'll just put the kid out there. I don't care. Or I get another veteran, save me some money and roll with that. But it would be hard for people to get excited, even if you make some good player acquisitions, if your vision isn't clear to the public.
Right, and there were a lot of fans when I had that post about it's a possibility Pete Carroll comes back in 2026, though it's not my preference. I had a lot of fans reply, if that happens, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be a fan anymore. That's what a lot of people on Twitter said. But of course, you get people every
It's an
year say,
emotional
"Oh,
response.
if the Raiders do this, I'm not going to be a fan. I'm not going to watch." And they wind up watching and being a fan anyway. But I really do think, though, if Pete Carroll is back in 2026 with Geno Smith, you're going to get a lot of people checking out before the season even starts. There are going to be a lot of people who say, "Look, I'll pay attention to what they're doing, but unless they start winning games, I'm not watching football games from start to finish." Because I did have a lot of people respond to me on social media saying this is the first year where they didn't watch full football games, where they would just watch the first quarter or just the first half or just, whatever the case may be, but not watching from start to finish like they used to. And they'd rather do other things than watch a two-win football team. So just keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I always equate it. I know it's a much longer season, but Mo, I'm a baseball guy too. I love baseball. But if you're a Pittsburgh Pirate fan and your team is 24 games back by the All-Star break, you might still go to a game here or there or check out what's going on, watch a game here, but you just don't check in like you usually do. And I think that's where Raider fans are right now with their team. And I just can't imagine the decision-making process would lead them back to that. Again, if they had massive financial constraints, okay. If you had no cap space, okay, then you got to do what you got to do. You got to grin and bear it. I get that. But that's not going to be the case with this team with 120 some $1 million in cap space and high draft picks. Obviously, you're going to have here, whether they're one. And by the way, I think if they win out 2 games, the last thing I read from Vinny after the game was they can the lowest they'll, or I should say, the worst they would finish in draft order is 7 if they won out both games and things went the way they went. So we'll see if that's correct. But nonetheless, this team's going to draft high. Most likely, if they don't win these 2 games, then they'll pick number 1 or number 2, and they'll be in that realm to get a quarterback. But yeah, I just can't imagine. And like I said, that schedule next year is tough, man. Playing that AFC East again. Yeah, you got the Jets, although the Jets have shown some life here and there, maybe saving Aaron Glenn's job after just 1 year too. But I'll tell you, it's not going to get easier. So I think next year you're going to go through a situation where Raiders, not going to make the playoffs again. But if you give fans something to be excited about, a young coach, a unified vision that can be clearly communicated to the fan base, a young quarterback coming in that gives people hope, and moves that show that you're serious about upgrading, that's a whole different story.
It absolutely is, and people want to look forward to something. I will say this, though. If they do run it back with Pete Carroll, as people would say, I say Carroll funny, but Pete Carroll and Geno Smith, if they do run it back with those 2 and draft Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore, it would provide some hope for the future, because then at least you could say, they ran it back with those 2, but at least they have a quarterback that they can potentially develop for the future. And we all know that Pete Carroll is not going to be there too long. He's going to be 75 by the time week 1 kicks off in 2026. So maybe he has another year or 2 at best in him. And Geno Smith, right now they can let him go and save some cap space. I know they will have some dead cap left over, but if Geno Smith is out of there by 2026, let's say he passes the baton over to that young quarterback in the middle of the 2026 season, I think that's when people will start to tune in, when that young quarterback steps into the football game.
And I mean, for me, from my objective point of view, I would be even more skeptical. Now, I know you're just laying out a scenario.
Yep.
If that scenario happened, Pete Carroll stays, they draft a young quarterback like Mendoza or Dante Moore, that would not make any sense to me, because why would you want a 75-year-old guy and a coaching staff that has been, frankly, crap all season long, develop the most coveted prize you have in your franchise, which is a young quarterback on a rookie deal? It doesn't make any sense. So if I was a Raider fan, I know what you're saying, Mo, you'd at least have that quarterback there. But is that quarterback going to make it? Is he going to lose a valuable year or 2 in development because you have Pete Carroll there, and who else? We have no clue who the offensive coordinator would be. But to me, that would be the most dangerous thing. It's like, hey, I'm bringing home a Ferrari and I'm going to put some bicycle wheels on it, because that's what we're doing. So to me, that it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I appreciate you laying that out, because that is a distinct possibility. We just don't know what's going to happen with this Raiders franchise. I hope they make the right moves. I hope they're able to go out and get that young defense. And you talked about the coaches this year. Ben Johnson, of course, your guy, Liam Cohen. Look at what the Jaguars have done and how they've turned around their season. 11 in a row at home. They are going, they're in contention for the best record in the conference. They're right there with Denver, right? So it's amazing how quickly things can turn. I'm not saying the Raiders are going to go from this year winning 2, 3, 4 games, whatever it ends up being, to being a 10-win team next year. I'm not saying that, but you can turn things quickly with the right people. That's why, to me, the importance of where this organization goes, its entire future, in my view, or at least over the next 10 years, is going to be determined within the next few weeks once we get past the end of the season, Black Monday, and hopefully Pete Carroll steps aside, because that will tell you if that organization has gotten itself together.
The main reason I think Pete Carroll should be fired is because I just don't think he's in alignment with John Spytek.
Yep.
And if that, you can sell team brass on, we're going to draft, I want to draft a quarterback early, I'll play the young guys. Unless you're on the same page as your GM, it is not going to work. And that's why I say let go of Pete Carroll, have John Spytek have some influence on the hiring of the next head coach, and hopefully that head coach is a young offensive mind, and have that young offensive mind of the quarterback of your choosing, and then take
Okay.
it from there and see where the chips may fall. You have the cap space. You're going to have a high draft pick. You're going to have the resources to turn around. I'm not saying it's going to be a Bears Jaguars like turnaround, but you're going to have the resources to win a lot more football games and actually be a competitive football team for most of the season in 2026.
Right. And I agree with you. And I think the Bears situation to me is a good example because Caleb Williams came out last year, didn't play great. A lot of people call him a bust because now in the NFL, if you don't come out and ball your first year, you're a bust, which is crap. But nonetheless, and the reason the Bears are playing the way they are is not just because, well, they were so good and they just needed the right coach. That's part of it, no question. But the quarterback play has improved vastly. So when you have good quarterback play in the NFL, I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I'm saying you put yourself in a position to win a lot more football games, and that's what you're seeing out of the Chicago Bears right now. All right, we're going to step aside here on Silver and Black today, and we're coming up to the final segment of the show where we get to your phone calls. Coming up next, Silver and Black today. It is Scott. It is Mo. Don't go anywhere. We're coming back right after these words. Welcome back, everybody. The home stretch here on this edition of Silver and Black today. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to all of you. We appreciate you being with us. Hope you're enjoying the holiday season, that you have some of that cheer. It's also a tough time, I know, for people who might be going through some tough things. And if you are, make sure you talk to somebody. Make sure you know you're not alone out there. It's a tough season for people too. And I always recognize that, and just make sure you talk to somebody. There's always somebody out there who'll listen to you, and want to make sure you do that. So happy holidays to all of you. Mo and Scott back here talking Raider football. We're going to get to the Raider Nation hotline. Mo, it's interesting because over the 8+ years I've covered the Raiders and we've done this show, we've had obviously bad seasons for the Raiders. This one, though, seems so different because it's been so bad. But I find a lot, and we talked about in earlier segments about people saying, hey, I'm going to check out if they bring Pete Carroll back and all that kind of stuff. But I also sense a lot of people, there's more acceptance this year because they are looking towards that plan for the future. And they want something, as you mentioned earlier, positive to kind of hitch the trailer to. Are you seeing the same thing out there when you talk to people?
They want something positive, and I think that, as I said, in my Bleach Report Lives the last few weeks, the talk has been less about the actual game. Now, I did talk more about the game because Ashton Jeanty looked fantastic on this past Sunday. So
Yeah.
there was talk about that and potentially him being back in the Offensive Rookie of the Year race. I did mention Travion Henderson probably being ahead of him, but with Travion Henderson going down Sunday night against the Ravens with an injury, more word on that. Ashton Jeanty is back in the Offensive Rookie of the Year category, him and Ted McMillan in Carolina. But
Yep.
there is a lot of people who just want to. There are a lot of people out there who just want to see hope for the future. What can I look forward to if I'm a Raider fan? Why am I tuning in 2026? Because I tuned out in 2025 because that's what a lot of fans are asking me. Why am I tuning into this team in 2026? Why should I give this team my attention and my time?
Exactly. And the Sportsman of the Year award just awarded to DK Metcalf. No, I'm kidding. Wow. Could you believe that?
Situation? Yeah.
It's different. Players yell back at the crowd all the time, including expletives. That's fine. They don't flip them off. Geno Smith, whatever. But when you go to action, and in this case, you punch somebody, man. And I'm hearing the talking heads say, well, he might not get suspended. He might just get a fine. I'm like, damn, you're assaulting somebody. Now he opened himself to a lawsuit. So we'll see what happens. But crazy, crazy times. You got to keep your head together out there on the field, especially when you're making that kind of money. All right, let's get out to the phone calls. Let's get to the Raider Nation switchboard. You can always call in 702-900-7869. Be pithy. Be pithy. You have up to 3 minutes, but I find the best calls are about a minute and a half. Make your point, prepare, get ready to go. That improves your chances of getting on. So let's do it. Let's go out to Bryce in Iowa. All that corn, he's ready to talk Raider football.
Scott and Mo, this is Bryce from Iowa. Haven't called in a while, but I just wanted to share with you some of my consistent pessimistic viewpoints on our beloved Raider franchise. And I'm just sitting here thinking that it's going to happen again, isn't it? Here we are, we're gonna win the last few games, which seem to be meaningless games, but they are anything but meaningless to the future of this franchise. Once again, very much like the AP situation, our seemingly dead-in-the-water coaching staff is probably going to be given new life by winning the last couple games, which means we're going to be out of range of getting our franchise quarterback in this year's draft again. We'll run it back with Pete and Geno. We'll win 6 games next year, maybe 7, just enough to not get a franchise quarterback in 2027's draft either, but also not enough to warrant the firing of the coaching staff again, and also not enough to give this franchise the hard reset that it needs. So once again, Raider Nation, we're going to be stuck in Raider Purgatory. So sweet dreams, Raider Nation. There's a lot more of rinse, repeat for the future for this franchise. But please tell me, where am I going wrong? Have a good one, guys.
Bryce in Iowa, continued PTSD. Yeah, it's hard to argue. We talked about the Giants earlier. Raiders have a significant opportunity to win a game there. Mike Kafka is the interim head coach. There's no talk of him getting the job full time. So again, a team that's not doing well under an interim head coach. It's not like the Rich Bisaccia thing with the Raiders a few years ago where the players were playing with him and he might have a chance to get the job. Mike Kafka, you're in New York, Mo. There's no talk of Mike Kafka being the head coach of the Giants. They're talking more about Marcus Freeman than they are about him. Secondarily, the Chiefs are a freaking disaster. Gardner Minshew now out with an ACL. They're going to be on their third quarterback against the Raiders, not to mention they have a slew of other injuries and players out. It could have, I think the possibility that they win 2 games is much greater than Pete Carroll being back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think now, first of all, thanks for the call, Bad News Bryce, and out of Iowa. Bad news Bryce.
Oh.
But no, he laid out the situation I talked about in the second segment. There's a possibility that Pete Carroll is back. Though I did say this on Twitter. I said beating a bad Giants team that has regressed offensively, by the way, since they fired Brian Daboll under Mike Kafka, and beating the Chiefs with a third-string quarterback should not be enough to save your job.
No.
Neither of these teams are quality teams. The Chiefs got waxed this past Sunday by the Titans. I know Cam Ward is showing improvement, but they got absolutely throttled by the Titans. And as the Giants have 2 wins just like the Raiders. They're just as bad of a football team. As I said, their defense is a sieve right now, and their offense has regressed. In no way, shape, or form can you look at beating those 2 teams and saying, you know what, Pete Carroll may have figured it out. He beat the bad Giants and the Chiefs on their third quarterback. No way. But then again, we all know that, as Bad News Bryce said, these are the Raiders we're talking about. Anything could happen. And it would be a Raider thing for John Spytek or Mark Day, whoever is in charge, to say, you know what, let's give Pete Carroll one more shot at it. Let's give him one more swing. And it's going to be the most – it's going to cause some pandemonium on social media, of course, but it's just going to be the most underwhelming decision and the most baffling decision if you want to develop for the future with a 74-year-old head coach. It's not going to make sense. The timelines aren't going to make sense. I hope it does not happen. I don't like to call for people's jobs, but it's just not the right fit for the Raiders, where the Raiders need to go in 2026 and beyond.
And also remind folks, though, not that it's any solace, but if the Raiders don't finish with the first pick in the draft, they're not assured of getting the quarterback, because we've talked about the teams that have tons of draft capital, the Rams, the Jets. All these teams could trade up to that first spot if it's the Giants, right? And it's not the Raiders or whoever it is, and the Raiders are lower. The Raiders don't have as much draft capital to trade up, at least in the next couple of years. They'd have to trade quite a bit in order to get to that, to compete with some of those teams like the Rams and the Jets. So we'll keep it there. Bad news, Bryce. We say that out of love, Bryce.
Yes,
self-admitted. So there you go. All right. Now go out to Oakland, of course, birthplace of the Raiders, with Anders.
Hello, fellas. It's Anders calling from Oakland. I just want to let you guys know that I keep notes in my note app about all the things that are wrong with the Raiders. I think I'm running out of memory. So I'm going to pick one here, and I think this is kind of in Murph's area, which is like, why is Pete Carroll so grating to all of us diehard fans? And I think it's because we see through him. He's a total hypocrite. Like this whole compete thing, it's bullshit. And we all see through it. His O-line coach, is that the best O-line coach we could find? The run game coach, happens to be the same guy. Is that the best run game coach we could find? The starters and shifting around the offensive line, was that the best thing we could do? Did they compete? The wide receiver starters, did they compete? I mean, it's the quarterback, for God's sakes, linebackers. His whole thing about, I love playing young guys. Right. I mean, go down the offensive line, wide receiver, linebacker, defensive back line. These guys are all a bunch of washed vets. And the only reason he is now playing the right guys that he should have played a long time ago is because of injuries. So if you're going to have this motto of compete, you better live it. He ain't. So we all recognize that it is absolute nonsense. It's a nonsense slogan. And it's why it's so grating to listen to him. I can't listen to his press conferences. I can't listen to his interviews. I can't hear this guy speak because it's all crap. And it's insulting to me. Does he really think that we are that dumb that we buy this still? Good grief. Just get rid of the guy.
There's Anders. I think I know where Anders stands, Mo. But listen, is it willful lying to the public, deception? I don't know that it is. Listen, Pete Carroll, one of his greatest positives is that positive attitude, right? That move. I said it a couple weeks ago, right, Mo, on this show, which was I thought he's delusional. He's done things the same way. He's 75 years old, 74 going on 75. And it's sort of like that old Naked Gun theme where Leslie Nielsen says, there's nothing to see here, and the whole building's exploding behind him. I think it's the same thing. I don't think it's willfully going out there trying to deceive people, but it comes across that way because everyone else can see the truth.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think Pete Carroll is an optimistic person. Mm-hmm. And I've had Seahawks fans tell me this, particularly about injuries. He's always optimistic about injuries. He'll tell you a guy is working his way back or close to being back, and he's not anywhere close. So Pete Carroll naturally is an optimistic person. He's going to give you the glass half full perspective. But I also think that Pete Carroll has this thing where he can tell you something that he knows is not true, and you're just going to accept it. And I think and I'm not criticizing reporters. I'm not going to criticize reporters and beat writers for this, but he hasn't faced a lot of follow-up questions or questions about challenging him about some of the things he's said. So if Pete Carroll says, yeah, I love playing the young guys and blah, 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 there should be a question about, well, why weren't the young guys on the field a lot earlier? Oh, they're not ready. What makes them not ready? What did they have to do to get ready to play? Mm-hmm. And I think to the credit of the beat writers, someone did ask some questions along those lines, and he said something about, they had to show out in practice. And, I think that's kind of like a thing where we don't know what these players look like in practice. So we're just taking Pete Carroll's word for it because a lot of the practice sessions aren't available to the media. They only get certain, amount of access to what players look like at these practice sessions. So Pete Carroll is a bit of a football politician. That's what it is. Yeah. He's going to tell you what he thinks not what he thinks you want to hear, but the political answer, the politically correct answer. Mm-hmm. But we all can see, as Anders said, we can all see through it. It's basically telling you things that aren't true. Playing young guys, we watched the games, Pete. Young guys didn't see the field until around Thanksgiving, and you knew you weren't making the playoffs long ago. And there's certain things, Scott, that coaches get up to the podium and say, but if you are a football fan of any capacity, you don't have to be the most plugged in football fan and follow the game for years and all day on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays to know some of these things, the basics that Pete Carroll's telling you things that just aren't true.
Right. And to your point about asking some of those follow-up questions about why a player is not ready, especially when you have 2 third-round offensive linemen, some of those questions could very easily be, okay, well, he's not ready. Well, why? How have you made that assessment? Well, by practice. Okay, then what in your mind should a third round draft pick on the offensive line, how long should that take to develop? Have they improved enough? Is it a situation where you don't think that they're going fast enough? Are they on schedule? Like some of those questions, right, Mo? Like, hey, if you're a third round draft pick on the offensive line in the NFL, it's a hard position to play. I get that. You've had poor offensive line play. You're telling me that player's not developing as quickly as you thought he might?
See, my thing is, not only is he not playing, but Caleb Rogers wasn't even active until
Yeah,
Jordan
exactly.
Meredith and Jackson Powers-Johnson got hurt. To Andre's point, this youth movement that the Raiders had, and it was necessary. In a way, it was forced because he needed healthy bodies.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
why is it? And my question, no one's asked this. Hey, Pete, we understand you said that Caleb Rogers wasn't ready to play and that could be practiced, but why is it that coincidentally he's all of a sudden ready to play when you have all of these injuries? So if he wasn't ready to play before the injuries, now you need him and now you plug him in, all of a sudden he looks good. What's your answer to that? Don't you think he could have got on the field a little earlier to get that experience? There are just certain follow-up questions that need to be asked of Pete Carroll
Yeah.
that haven't been asked. No one, I understand it's a sensitive subject, Scott, but no one has asked him about his son's role coaching the offensive line and run game. A lot of people say at the beginning of the
Very
season,
true.
the questions were, why aren't we running the ball more? Well, why isn't there development in those areas, the offensive line and the run game? That's your son's position. And again, I know it's a sensitive subject, but someone has to step up and say, hey, your son is coaching two of the worst areas of this football team. Where can there be improvement? How can he improve as a coach?
Right, but it shouldn't be a sensitive subject because even though it's his son, it is a paid position. That's when you hire somebody for that position, whether it's your son or not, there has to be questions about the performance there. Just like there's questions about the performance of the quarterback, about the offensive line itself, about players. I mean, you ask those questions, there should be no delineation between the two. All right. Excuse me, Anders, thanks for the call. Now we're going out to Misha in Orange County, California, staying in the Golden State.
Hey, Scott, hey, Mo, it's Misha calling from Orange County, California. Yeah, Geno's hand injury seemed to be okay today. Most importantly, his middle finger was okay, so he can flip off the fan some more times.
Woo!
I have a feeling that Pete is going to, in the post game, talk about how competitive we are and how close we are. You know what I miss? I miss one of those old school Jim Mora type of press conferences where he just craps all over the team. I think I want to see that out of Pete. Look, reality is, I never want the team to tank. I never want the team to purposefully lose, but we got to be honest with ourselves about where we're at and what winning would mean for us. This isn't the draft from 2 years ago where they had, 6 quarterbacks available. We have maybe 2 at best. And that's just what this draft is looking like. So we have to be real about that. And, winning more games could hurt that position and hurt our chances. So, it is what it is. I don't want the team to lose, but we just got to be honest about what that means for us if we do win. Bottom line, though, Pete can't come back. Geno can't come back. That's a given. Anyways, guys, take care. Have a Merry Christmas. Bye.
Thanks, Misha. And it's a non-argument from me and Mo, but we'll see. I don't know that it's a foregone conclusion yet. He brings up the point about quarterbacks, though, too, Mo, and the fact that the Raiders could hurt themselves via the draft. We don't know if Dante Moore is coming out yet, right? We know Mendoza will because he's assured of being the number 1 draft pick for the most part. If Dante Moore comes out, I think Dante Moore may come out depending who the team is there that likes him, right? I mean, he can stay. Oregon's going to give him a ton of money, not as much money as he make in the NFL, by the way. But if he's not excited to play for the Raiders and the Raiders are picking second, the Raiders say, hey, we'd like to take you if you come out, or they give that indication, he may still opt to stay in and the Raiders may still be out. So that's the thing with the draft, but nothing's guaranteed.
Nothing is guaranteed. That's why I think Misha said, maybe 2 quarterbacks at best of interest, which means if the Raiders are picking outside of the top 3, chances are they're going to miss out on those top quarterback prospects. And then you're looking at maybe drafting a quarterback in the second or third round, which I'm not opposed to. I've said this before, and I'll say it again.
Right.
Raiders should be drafting quarterbacks every year until they find their guy. Even if they don't draft the top quarterback prospect, draft one on day two. Draft one on day two. Who knows? It may work out. I know the percentages are very low, but they need to start cycling in young quarterbacks. Kenny Pickett is not it. I think we saw that against the Philadelphia Eagles. He is not it. Cam Miller is nowhere to be found right now, and he's got a long road. I don't think he'll be an NFL starter at any point in his career. I hate to doubt guys, but it's just facts are facts. No, opinions are opinions, I should say.
Absolutely.
But the Raiders should be taking swings. And even if they don't take a swing in the first round, take a swing in the middle rounds at a quarterback and develop that guy. Because right now, the NFL has been trending toward mobile young quarterbacks. And AOC, great, could be a great backup, could be a really good quality backup, but he just does not fit in today's league as even a backup, as even a quality backup quarterback. So you still need a number two there behind whoever's your starter in 2026.
There's still people who believe that Aiden O'Connell's a franchise quarterback. So, hey, what do we know? But it also depends on the system, right? So if you go with a new coach, that all changes. If you have a quarterback that doesn't fit in that system, it doesn't matter if they're good as a backup or whatever. It's going to be time to say goodbye. All right, our last call of the show is Joe out in the place of my birth, Chicago. Here we go.
Fellas, Joe from Chicago. In honor of the Festivus season, I am going to share with you my 2025 airing of grievances. Grievance number one, people saying that Pete Carroll should stay for the sake of continuity. Today is Tuesday. Tomorrow I have surgery. I have had problems with my breathing for the better part of the decade. In 2021, I had surgery on my septum to repair it. Didn't fix it. At that point, I said what the continuity people said. I don't want to deal with this again. It's too much of a pain to go see a new doctor, to fill out all the paperwork, to get all the tests, to wait for the results for them to know nothing. As I told my wife, I can sit on my backside on the couch and not know what's wrong with me. I don't need to pay a doctor for that. That ended this summer with me going to the ER because I thought I was going to die because I could not get my breath. Wow. I went to 2 ENTs. They didn't know what was wrong. I went to a pulmonologist. He didn't know what is wrong. I had been poked, prodded. I've gotten an EKG, ultrasound, x-rays, CT scans. Finally, I went through all these personnel. I finally found somebody who knew what was wrong with me, and he's going to fix it tomorrow.
Wow.
You keep going until you find somebody who can get it right. It shouldn't take this long, but Mark Davis, not good at hiring. But had I just said, I'll just live with it, it just doesn't work. You got to keep going until it's fixed. And the Raiders are basically on the table right now and need to be revived. That's grievance number one. Grievance number two, people who say that this was always a obvious rebuild. No, it wasn't. Pete Carroll was saying, we're going to win 10 games. I'm used to winning. We're going to win right away. It was not a rebuild. A rebuild is something that you do with intentionality. A rebuild is a plan that you have. When you are doing a rebuild, you tell the people, trust the process. You do not tell the people, we're going to win right away. It was never a rebuild. We are not rebuilding. We are falling like a rock. And then lastly, I'll share with you guys my hopes for I like A Christmas Carol with George C. Scott, the old school one. My hope for this year is 3 Christmas carols. Pete, Brennan, Nate, make like Jacob Marley and ghost me. I never want to see you again. Adios, sayonara. Thank you for absolutely precisely nothing. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, or do. I don't care. Just get gone. Love you guys. Thanks for the pod.
There you go. Joe in Chicago.
Joe.
Dr. Moten, do you agree with Dr. Joe's assessment in that? He brought home a real world example of his own pain in his life, and it makes perfect sense.
And good luck to you in your surgery Tuesday,
Yes.
Joe. Going through all those health complications. So wish you the best in the speedy recovery. But I completely agree. I have nothing to add to that. That is the perfect way to finish off this show with Joe's call about what he wants to see and the problem with saying, just keep things together for continuity. If you know there's a problem, to sum up Joe's call, and he laid it out perfectly with his own life experiences. If you know something is wrong, fix it. And I think that's what we've said in the past weeks, that you can see that this is not working.
Right.
I know a lot of people say
Everybody
you need
can.
to give a head coach, more than a year to build something. As I said in the second segment, the timelines just don't match. The Raiders are a team that needs a lot as far as rebuilding is concerned. I know they have some building blocks. Ashton Jeanty, Brock Bowers, Colt Miller got an extension this year. I get that. They have some pieces there, but they need quite a bit to fill on defense. They redid their secondary, and that hasn't worked out. They're still having problems with tackling. It's late December, Scott. The Raiders are having problems with tackling. And
Yeah.
come on now. So
Yeah.
they need a rebuild. They need a full-blown rebuild. They need to, people are going to say blow it up, and that's subjective, what you think that means, but they need to start over as far as their coaching staff is concerned. As Joe said, the Carrolls need to be out of the door, because we don't need anybody given a job because they're related to the head coach. We need the best possible head coaches and assistants in certain positions. And in this case, it is not Pete Carroll's sons. So if Pete Carroll doesn't want to relieve his son of his duties or have his son take a lesser position, then the Raiders need to move on, because I've said this over and over again. Your offensive line coach is arguably the most important assistant on your staff. That group is responsible for protecting your quarterback and opening lanes for your run game. If your offensive line is weak or below average, you're going to have a problem sustaining success in this league and winning football games.
Yep. Well said, my friend. Good way to end it here on this Christmas week edition of Silver and Black today. Mo, I know you'll be working on Christmas with the NFL as well. Let everybody know what you got coming up this week. A lot of people will be out, lots of time as they're out shopping and running around to listen to Bleacher Report Live, to listen to this podcast, other stuff. Let them know what you're doing.
This week, I'm going to talk about a little bit what I mentioned today. Is Ashton Jeanty now back being the front runner for Offensive Rookie of the Year voting? He was the front runner coming into the season, kind of fell behind because of the Raiders' offensive line issues, and of course, he was only running for like 3 yards per carry. But now all of a sudden, you look at his numbers, he can get more votes and potentially win the award again. So I'll talk about his chances over at Bleacher Report Live. And I'll also talk about the report that Tom Brady is going to have more influence over the Raiders. Well, actually, he's going to have an increased presence in the Raiders building as they make their decisions in the offseason. I'll talk about if that's a good or bad thing for this team's future.
Nice. And by the way, I know he's getting paid $30-some million to do Fox, but I don't see how you do both of those things. If you're going to be a broadcaster, be a broadcaster. If you want to be involved in decision-making with the Raiders, step aside. I mean, it's easy for me to say he doesn't need the money, but he doesn't need the money. So step aside. If you're going to do that and you're going to be involved daily with the Raiders, then you have to be involved daily. You can't have 1 foot in, 1 foot out like you've talked about in the past, Mo. So there you go. All right. Want to wish everybody out there, again, a Merry Christmas, and we will see you guys soon. I'm planning on doing a post game on Sunday, so stick around. The last two I've had health issues, so hey, what are you going to do? Get the flu, you get the flu. Want to run through my whole house, but now we're back. So we appreciate you guys being with us, and check in with Murph and I after the game against the Giants on Sunday. Also, make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get it. But I want to wish all of you out in Raider Nation, all of our listeners and viewers, a Merry, Merry Christmas. And also special Christmas greetings out to our producer, Mike Rabier at Odyssey, and our producer on the radio in Las Vegas, Mark Bonilla. Thanks to all of you. Enjoy the holiday. From mine to yours, Merry Christmas. Mo, take care, my friend. Merry Christmas to you, too.
Take care, Scott. Take care, Raider Nation. And again, speedy recovery to Joe in Chicago. Happy holidays to you all.
All right. For everybody here at Silver and Black today, have a great holiday, folks, and we'll talk to you next time.